bite-sized inspiration, which we like to call Effiespiration, where we are able to learn from each other and to help each other raise the bar so that we can take Sri Lanka marketing, Sri Lanka advertising, our creativity global. So today's session is called Always Go Back to Basics. And today's session is conducted by Chamindri Pilimathalauwe. She's the Assistant Vice President Marketing at Suffragette Life. And unlike many marketers who are actually involved in both sales and marketing, Chamindri has been blessed in a way where she is able to actually apply theory and scientific marketing into her day-to-day job, because she's one of the key members of the campaign and the brand that kind of revolutionized the life insurance industry. And not only that, she has also gone on to give birth to many other brands using her scientific knowledge in terms of brand building. I can't think of anybody else who can do a better job at this. So Chamindri, over to you and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kavi, for the intro. So without further ado, I'll just project my screen. Can everybody see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, so good evening. Thank you so much for joining. And as the topic says, I don't want to make this a very heavy presentation, although Kavi said that it's my role is mostly really going back to theory and looking at the scientific aspect of things. I really want to do justice to the topic itself, where I'm saying always go back to basics. And I want to make this session a very absolute basic session where I would like to talk about very, very basic things that us as marketeers or advertisers sometimes forget to look at, and things that we have to, as a mantra in our lives, actually follow through when it comes to marketing. So I'll start my question with my session with one question, right? What is the toughest job for a marketer or an agency? Right. Sometimes most of us might say it's about launching this disruptive campaign, in doing industry innovations, to being novel, to being different, to being like Apple, being like Burger King, campaigns like that, creating mind-blowing campaigns. We might come up with all kinds of very heavy jargon that we might describe this, right? But for a marketer, from my perspective, the toughest thing is is to taking yourself back to basics and sticking to basics. This is something that most marketers and advertisers kind of forget to do, right? So everything else that I spoke of before is something that is a byproduct of everything we do if we do this part correctly, right? I'll tell you why that is, right? We are innately very, very creative, inspired beings, marketeers and advertisers for that matter, right? Just like love is blind, inspiration blinds us most of the time. We look at ideas, we look at concepts, we hear briefs, and we get so inspired. And sometimes, most of the times, we forget to ask the right questions as to why this might fit the brand, or why this should be the campaign for the brand, or why this talks to the consumer that we are talking to. Simply because inspiration, while it is the biggest blessing this industry has, that also blinds us at times if we do not ask the right questions and go by doing justice to really going to that why and to the basics that we are talking about, right? So always remember this: while inspiration is our biggest asset, you need to be mindful as to how you go around it, right? I would like to bring one of the examples that the kind of the Sri Lankan music industry right now has kind of really been revolutionized with this Manike Mage Hite song by Yohani. So what was the reason as to why this particular version of this song became such a hit and not the previous one, right? In my opinion, I think there's two things, right? One is the fact that if you look at the previous one, it was very traditional. It went by the typical style, to the music, to everything that any other song in Sri Lanka goes. But if you look at Yohani, she actually stayed true to what she is as a brand. She didn't forget that I am a brand. I have my identity. I have certain traits that I stand for. And because I am that, this song that I am putting, I will put it that in a way that Yohani does, right? True to her brand. And also she did it in a way that it was relevant to today's audience. That is a big issue with Sri Lankan music also, where we kind of stick to our traditional sense, but really not understand what the audience might need currently. How do we really, without losing the real true Sri Lankanness, how do we really make it relevant to today's audience? I think, yeah, Yohani really was able to do that. And that is one reason why this is going not just huge in Sri Lanka, but this is going on to global stages, right? So, I mean, two simple things in brand building, or rather brand development, or in terms of a brand as to how successful it should be. Two things that she has properly understood by default or purposefully. She has really kind of really ticked these two boxes, where she had really understood what the Sri Lankan consumer expects out of music, and what is my brand, what do I stand for, and how do I really put it out in a way that is true to me, right? So that, I think, is a great example right now in this context, in terms of what, if you really look at the absolute basics of a brand, if you do it right, what it can do to a campaign or a song or anything for that matter, right? So I would like to bring Softlogic Life here, because that is a brand that I worked for 5 years. And I would like to bring this as a case study in terms of explaining to you a few things that I think is important in terms of understanding basics behind building a brand, or rather developing a brand, right? So essentially, you all know what happened with Softlogic Life. It kind of completely transformed the insurance industry, where Softlogic Life came out and showcase this brand that was all about live life, love life, when the rest of the industry was talking about this death-driven, gloomy kind of perspective into insurance, right? But what I want to kind of take you through is, what did we do, or rather the basics that we went on to, where we kind of really transformed this. How did we come about this? This was not just suddenly we didn't wake up saying, you know what, everyone is on that side, let's go to this side. No, there were a lot of things that we went on to understanding before we launched something like this, right? So the first thing was, like all marketeers, uh, gut is something that I suppose all marketeers or advertisers have. And this was something that we felt was needed in the industry, where insurance needed to change in terms of a positioning, right? So as Softlogic Live, when we wanted to relaunch, we kind of had a gut feel this might be a space that we can operate in. But gut can't just be gut. You need to back it up with data or research or whatever you do. Really understand the consumer, really understand what is the brand that you're trying to put out, and really back it up with logic, right? So with this gut feel, we went on to understanding our consumer, and in terms of developing our brand also. So the first thing we did was, we really tried to understand who is our core consumer, who is this main person that is going to drive business for Softlogic Life, right? So from a demographic point of view, we really described our customer, but that was not enough for us. We really needed to understand what was the psyche of this consumer. What are they really looking for? What is their lifestyle like, right? So this kind of really shows just a guide, but this is basically both male and female for that matter. What we understood was, this person has three things that they focus on. One is that this person is very progressive, very career minded, wants to achieve things in life, very family focused. They don't want to achieve things alone. They want their families to do well as well. But this person also is not a workaholic in all its sense, doesn't try just only to think about work or family. This person also is concerned about his health, his well-being, his happiness, right? So we really understood, okay, this is the kind of customer we are talking about. This is their thinking, right? But that, it didn't stop there. Okay, so this customer is very progressive, very thinking about life, living life, not wanting to give benefits after he dies, but want to live life happily with the family. So with that, we went on to the other elements. So what is this person expecting out of insurance? That was basically out of life. That is what they expect. But what is it that they expect out of insurance? Then that is where we understood, okay, insurance is really operating, this was an obvious case, right? Where insurance is operating in this whole dependent protection, consoling. When something happens to you, we are going to be there. When you die, we will take care of your family kind of spaces where they were, right? But what they really wanted was this insurance. If it's an ideal insurance brand, they wanted them to give them peace of mind, freedom, confidence, so that they could go live life, feel empowered, progress in life, right? So that is what people expected out of insurance, right? When we really drilled down and really understood through research what they really wanted. So then we went on to say, fine, if that is what they want, where we are headed is now justified, right? People, in terms of a consumer, this is what they want. In terms of a brand, this is a huge blue ocean, and this is somewhere we can really go and differentiate ourselves, right? So that is where we said, fine, this is going to be our space for Softlogic Life. But that doesn't stop there. What is the reason to believe? If we are going to say, here we are talking about this whole proactive, energetic, very positive brand who's telling you to live life, love life, what right would Softlogic Life have to say that? What is the absolute reason to believe, right? You can be this brand talking about all of this, but why should people believe you, right? That is when we went on, that is when we like really looked at our strengths as a brand. And we saw that we have this amazing health proposition, which has actually been there with Softlogic Life. And we were the best in terms of what we offered. So we said, fine, even if you look at the Letter campaign, we are basically saying, ඕනේ ලෙඩක් හදාගන්න Softlogic Life ඉන්නවා බලාගන්න, right? We can tell that to people because we have the best health insurance in Sri Lanka, right? So we went on to understanding the consumer, we went on to identifying an absolute opportunity space, and then we went on to looking at what the company is capable of delivering, and then brought all of these three together. That doesn't stop there, right? Fine. So if we have an RTB that says best health insurance, why not go and say, 50 million health cover, worldwide hospitalization, cashless claim settlement? We can do that, right? But we didn't do that, right? Instead, what you see Softlogic Life putting out is ladder, or very emotional kind of, very positive, energetic kind of campaigns that are very thematic based. Why did we do that? It's very important that any brand, any product, or any organization understand what their role of marketing is for that particular brand. For Softlogic Life at that point, like I told you, the entire insurance industry was very gloomy and talking about death. So our role here essentially was to really make people see us differently. And that was one of the main reasons. The other reason was insurance, no matter what you do, you might show 100 advertisements and tell that we are this amazing, we have this amazing product and all of that. Nobody's going to watch an ad and go buy insurance, right? That is why we have an agent, where an agent, a properly trained agent, goes and talks to people, customizes the product based on their need, and really explains insurance to people, because insurance is not easy to understand over a marketing campaign, right? So because of that, we understood that our role of marketing is not to tell people, you know what, we have this amazing product, go buy it. That's never going to happen. So with that in mind, and also with this whole negative space being there in people's minds, we really wanted to differentiate, and we really wanted to make an impression in people's mind, a very positive kind of impression, so that when an agent approaches our customer, they actually have a very good impression, and they actually welcome us with open arms, right? So that is what we have been doing for the last 5 years. And for us, no matter what we do, this role of marketing has been very essential in whatever we do, where we question everything we do to ask ourselves, does this deliver this? Are we sticking by this, right? Because for different brands, this role of marketing is different. So it's important that we understand what is it that, what is the sentiments of our consumers, what is it the brand requires, how should we really take our brand or our product to the consumer, right? Because essentially, if we got this wrong and we started doing product marketing, Softlogic Life won't be where it is right now, right? It would have been an absolute blunder, and we would have been with the rest of we would have been positively a little different, but we wouldn't have had the amount of success we would have had if we didn't identify this role right, right? keep insurance aside. Why do we do marketing, right? This whole I was talking about, we kind of really understanding this consumer and really understanding the psyche and emotions and the lifestyle of people, right? So why do people do marketing? Why does Nike do what they do? Apple do what they do? Coca-Cola do what they do, right? Why do people do marketing? Let me just take you to an absolute fact, right? If we really look at how we make decisions, right? 95% of the time we take decisions on instinct, intuition. It's basically emotional based in terms of decision making, right? Very rarely and very seldomly do we take rational decisions or logical decisions, right? So most of the time, even when you look at your brain, everything first goes through an emotional phase and then only goes into logic, right? So imagine when we kind of really talk to a person through our campaign, through our product, if logic is not what they see first, if rational thinking is not what they do first, what's is there really a lot of success that we get through a campaign? There are instances where you might have to do that, but does that build brand love where people will stick with you, where it's you're actually creating sustainable brand love, where you're talking about long-term stickiness to a brand, right? So this is very essential, whether it's insurance or anything else. If you look at global brands and how they do marketing, this fact really establishes as to, and this is kind of vindicated, this fact is vindicated when you look at what other people, other brands, global brands do as well. And they are successful also because this particular equation in terms of how a human brain works and how they take decisions is really understood by them, right? So whatever we do, we need to always remember that this is how people think. We might have to at times do very tactical commercials where we talk about certain things, but that can't be our core, where we do very transactional kind of marketing and people kind of come to you only for that transaction based um, uh, requirement and not stick with us longer, right? So whether it's insurance or whether it's any other brand, this logic or this science kind of applies to anyone because this is how humans think, right? So always and always it's a battle between mind and heart, right? We might like most of the times we kind of go for that big huge large screen TV or this whole branded watch or branded TV. Is this the brand thinking? Sorry, is this the brain thinking? I don't think so, right? The brain might say I can't afford it, this is not worth it, but the heart basically has a gun pointed at you and saying, you know what, I need this giant TV, I need this uh, Omega watch, I need this for no damn reason, right? For no logical reason, but purely based on emotion. So always remember that people make decisions based on emotions, and it's always a battle between mind and heart, right? That is why brands like Coca-Cola, they talk about happiness, open happiness, bringing people together. Brands like Apple, it's big. They really portray this crazy, innovative outlook. Nike is all about inspiration, whether they do CSR or whatever. Even if they create, innovate a shoe, they kind of tell this everyday man, you know what? You wear my shoe, you can be an athlete, right? That is what they say. And look at how they now Burger King is all about this daring rebel kind of nature, and that is what they drive, this single message, but all to the emotion. And that has worked for them for years, right? So again, coming back to that fact that I showed you, the science behind how people make decisions, right? So always remember, never forget that this part of a human is very, very prevalent, and it's important that marketers understand that, and whatever we do it in that way so that we don't lose brand love. And that transactional nature, to a huge extent, that is important, but you need to kind of build a brand in a way that it kind of sticks through a lifetime if possible, in ways that brands such as Coca-Cola, Nike, Apple does, right? Going from that, another very, very basic element that a lot of us kind of ignore, or rather don't give a lot of priority, is sensorials, right? Sensorial elements of a brand. Does any brand have it? Yes, every brand has some element, one, two, or maybe more, sensorials. Can it influence emotions, or rather through emotions drive consideration? Absolutely, right? I want to bring two examples, two absolute basic examples that I or my team at Softlogic Life goes through on a daily basis, right? This is a question that comes to us from agencies, from internal teams, right? From other people, but we kind of something that we have to battle every day, but something that we shouldn't be battling, right? But let me take you to what, right? Before I do that, I want to tell you as to why we became a purple brand, right? Coming from the sensorials, I want you to first explain this to you. Why is Softlogic Life purple? Why did we become a purple brand, right? So when we kind of, I told you, we went through a very a scientific kind of a research-based route to kind of bring this brand to life, right? And when we did that, something that we got rather legacy that we kind of inherited was basically this archetype, which kind of also comes from our mother brand Softlogic, which is called the logical creator. So this logical creator had about three key colors, which was blue, purple, and red, if we are to go as a brand such as this. And we chose purple. One reason that we chose purple was, again, asking that big why. Why do you choose what you choose? One reason we chose purple was because none of the brands in Sri Lanka had a had a properly established purple color here, where they kind of really owned that color, right? So for us, it made perfect sense as a new brand that was coming and wanted to make the biggest voice possible. Color could play. We knew that the color can play a big role for us, right? So that was one basic reason as to why we chose purple, but that was not the main reason. The main reason why we chose purple was, I told you what our core audience was. I told you what their psyche was like. I told you what their lifestyle is like. And purple was this color that gave this sense of luxury, power, ambition, creativity, independence. You know, it kind of uplifts you. It gives you a sense of spirituality. It kind of evokes your creativity. Everything that our consumer was in terms of their psyche, right? So we really wanted to choose a color that reflects with their lifestyle, with their psyche, and that is why we chose purple. And everything else, so we have in terms of sound, so Leda Leda right now is our absolute identifier in terms of a jingle. All of this, so even Leda Leda was inspired by this very happy, inspirational moment, right? So everything that we have chosen, we have a reason as to why we have chosen, which kind of comes back to what the consumer wants. So keeping in mind their psyche, so that in somewhat way, we know that even when they see it or when they hear it, it evokes emotions in a person that we want evoked, and what the co-audience wants evoked as individuals, right? So it's great to create a strong base for a brand, but if you do not sustain it consistently, that falls flat, right? All of this research or whatever you do, and you kind of really come up with this brand architecture, you do all of that. If it's going to be in your basement or your attic, no point. If it's going to be collecting cobwebs, no point. You need to take it out every time. At least once a year, you need to take it out. If when you're doing campaigns, when you're doing product launches to whatever, you need to take it out. You need to reflect back. What am I doing? Does it reflect what I said I am here to do as a brand, right? So always you need to go back and reflect back and see. If you do not sustain it consistently, no point of creating that amazing brand, that great foundation, because it's going to just fall flat, right? I told you inspiration is our biggest strength and the biggest weakness. You get inspired, it's very, very likely that you can get off track easily, right? So this brand, this foundation that you build helps you kind of stay in track and kind of bring you back to where you're supposed to go, right? So going back to basics and sticking to basics is a non-negotiable for anyone, right? And I told you that when I started, I told you the sensorial element of it don't kind of, it's something that you can't kind of also really, it's a non-negotiable, because a lot of people kind of really don't give much thought to it, right? You kind of really your color, people kind of question all the time, do we really need to have so much color? Do we really need to have so much purple, right? That's something that people all the time ask, even in my company, even outside agencies ask that question. Why do you need so much purple every time? Last time we had 60% purple, can't we like have 30% now, right? You all have it every day, no? Like once you do that, it's okay. Like once a while, it's okay to lose it a little. You don't have to have everything purple, but don't do that. I'll go to when I go forward, I'll tell you why, right? Then again, another question that comes is your signature tune, your jingle. Do you need it every time? Can't we do another music track? I mean, it doesn't go with this campaign, no? We might have to change it a little. It's it is not it's not negotiable, right? It's not something that you should gamble with, right? If Coke, my best example, every time I speak about this color, this is the example I bring. Coke is 100 years. If Coke didn't stick to their color and still to date keep that color as the one thing that really identifies Coke, Christmas wouldn't have been red, and today people don't question as to why Christmas is not green and why it's red, because Coke has really established their color, and unquestionably, undoubtedly, they have just always stuck to it like a mantra. They've kept that red alive, right? They're 100 years old, and still they have not done anything to really reduce or go back on this color, right? And that is a 100-year-old brand. And what are we talking about here, right? A 5-year-old brand taking a step back to say, can we reduce the purple, is a big no-no, because people might see you once. People might see you once a week, once a month, once a year. Even when they see you, they might register you as you, maybe 1 out of the 10 times that they see you. Do you really want to gamble on those little elements so that you might not be, I mean, just for the look and feel of it, so that at the end of the day, the impression you want to make, or rather to be remembered as this brand, you're really gambling on it? Is that a gamble you want to take? I'm not sure, right? Because global brands have done it. It had worked for them. And there's a reason that they continue to do that, right? Never mess with the foundation the brand stands on. And even when it comes to sensorials, it's very important that you do that. I'll bring a very basic example, right? A real life example. About 4 days back, there was a rugby match, Springboks and Wallabies, right? Wallabies is sponsored by, sponsored by Cadbury, right? Cadbury is a purple brand. So I was looking, and then I was just passing by, and my husband asked, why do brands spend so much and go on and sponsor these events for huge amounts of money? Why? So it was a very interesting question, and I sat there. And then I asked, so this Cadbury logo also for me didn't look like purple at that point. It was like very black, but they had purple branding all over the area. Then I asked, so when you see this, does purple come into your head, right? When you now think of Cadbury, does the kind of the silky smooth texture come to mind? That silky smooth, the milky flavor, does that come to your mind? And then he was thinking for a while, and he was like, yeah, now that you're saying it, yes, right? And then I was watching. So after I did all of this, I just left, and I was watching him for a while, very curiously, for the entire day. And after about 2-3 hours, I saw him kind of ordering something, and I went and sat there. I was like, what you ordering? And he was like, I think I have a sweet tooth, and I'm looking for chocolate. And I asked, what chocolate are you ordering? A Cadbury? Then he said, no, I'm looking for this specific hazelnut lint or something he was saying. So look at the kind of impression you create, right? This is kind of the journey that we create for people. And if you have the opportunity as a brand that one time that a person sees it, you have so many elements. Cadbury has its color, it has its texture, it has its flavor, all of that is so well registered in people's mind. It has all of those elements, and they might use one or two which gives a person who's watching a half-baked experience, right? And ideally, the ideal situation would be this person needs to think of Cadbury and then suddenly get a urge to order Cadbury and eat a Cadbury, right? But does that always happen, right? People watch you, people see you. Sometimes that reaction that we might expect might not happen, right? Sometimes it might happen, but it's a gamble that we take. So again, coming back to the point where what we expect people to do might not 100% happen every time, but that gives us so much more reason to always never compromise on those foundations the brand stands on. And Sensorials is one of that, right? If you can, in whatever way, establish that color, establish the sensorials that people really connect with when you talk about your brand, do not really mess with it. If you can, always find ways to really establish those sensorials that are strong for the brand. A local example right now, which all of you all would have seen, Prima Kottumi, this grand theft, that the campaign that was going around, right? So I saw a few of the elements of it, and I was thinking, Prima Kottumi, people who have tasted it, people who know it, really knows the experience of eating it, the fragrance, the texture, to all of that, they really know. Could, while it's an amazing campaign, I mean, it had kind of, it's, I think, the first in Sri Lanka kind of campaign. While it's an amazing campaign, I couldn't stop thinking, why? So this is a grand theft, and they're like really talking, engaging with each other and all of that. Why couldn't they bring that element also through it, right? And these are people who are gaming, who are seated in front of a laptop or a computer, and they're like literally wasting time there, sitting for hours and hours. And they're people who kind of really eat fast food, right? So the next time they game, they have to have a Prima Kottumi next to them eating that, right? So little elements like that can really make a big difference for the brand and really help a brand achieve that objective that they want to achieve. Real simple elements, foundation that really is the foundation of your brand. You shouldn't mess with, right? Little elements that can create a big difference for a brand, right? Always a strong brand has strong sensorials. You might not have all 5 of these. So sensorials can go on to smell, sight, touch, hearing, the taste, all of that. But all brands, my insurance for sure can't do all of this. But there are brands that might have 1, 2, 3, whatever. But always try to see how you can bring these sensorials alive to give a full-on experience to people and help people remember. If your brand is known for certain sensorials, don't compromise on putting it out. Always make sure that you try to bring it out as much as possible, because that really connects you. Your sensorials are made in a way that it connects with your audience. And if it does, do not do that gamble of really taking things off. If it's 60% purple that you need, make sure that you always have that, so that people, whenever they see, wherever they see, they remember you, they come back. In terms of memory structures, you build certain elements for the brand. Ensure that they have a reason to reflect back and say, this is SoftLogic Live, this is this brand, this is Cadbury, or this is whatever, right? So it is really not an option for us to gamble on things like that, and we shouldn't. If we have, these are all assets that a brand has, and we should ensure that we really use these in a way that really makes sense for a brand, and it's an opportunity. And if you don't use it in the right way, it's an opportunity missed. And that's not with so many campaigns being put out, with so many communications being seen out there, it's an opportunity missed in absolute sense, right? So for the overall industry, marketeers or advertisers or agencies, whoever, there's 4 tips that I would tell everyone to kind of go to when you're doing anything for your brand, right? It could be a campaign, it could be a launch, an activation, or whatever. 4 tips that I would say anybody should follow when they're launching anything, right? First thing being, you have to see whether you have a foundation that you have built this brand on, and have it as a piece that you can refer back to. It might be your brand key. We have a brand key. We have a communications guide for SoftLogic Live. It might not necessarily be this. You might have something else. Doesn't matter. Always have something to refer back to where you can question every month, or every time you do a campaign, or every year you reflect, revisit, reevaluate. Have that foundation that you have built your brand on, because as a brand you need to tell one story. You can't be telling 100 stories where people get confused, right? When we launched SoftLogic Life, we launched it understanding the consumer, looking at what they need, and the brand had the strength to deliver it, right? So up to date, we have unquestionably, we have been always delivering that same message. If you look at the competition has pretty much, they are now pretty much doing the same things, very similar things that we're doing. But it really confuses people. Suddenly the competition went to sleep as Sunil and now has woken up as Amal, right? It really confuses you. Why is a brand like this now suddenly talking like this, right? So just because another person is doing something, does that have, does your brand have the right to do that? Question. Your brand stands for something, right? Your brand stands for something, and whatever you do, you need to question yourself. Is this right by my brand? My brand stands for this. Am I doing right by it, right? So that's first thing. You need to have a foundation to always refer back to, right? Whenever you do something, right? Always. And that you have to revisit, reevaluate. Sometimes you might have to reevaluate also. That's okay. But you have to have this base that you always refer back to. Second, what right does my brand have to do? What an agency is suggesting to do, or what we are trying as a brand, we are trying to do. What right does my brand have to do this or say this? And why should my brand do this? You have your identity, you have your key brand traits, a brand promise that you're driving, a brand values are your reasons to believe, right? What right, when you see a campaign or anything for that matter, always question the big why. Does this fit into the identity that I have put together, the brand traits that we stand for, the promise that we are driving? Ask yourself, what right does my brand have, right? And then why should my brand be doing this, right? Is this time relevant? What is the time relevant role that this whole, whatever the campaign or whatever that you're doing, because what you did 1 year back might not work anymore. Even for the same brand, you might have launched a campaign last year, the same route or same approach might not work. It needs to be time relevant, right? So ask these two questions. What, even from your agencies, even the agencies can ask the client, what right does your brand have, or our brand have, to do this, right? Always question. Thirdly, how is this solving something for my consumer? You know your consumer, you know what the expectations are. If you don't know, you need to find out what is the psyche, what are the insights behind what these consumers' needs are, tensions are, frustrations are, whatever, right? You really need to understand what, and then see if I'm doing something, is there an emotional benefit that I'm driving through this? Is there a tangible or a functional benefit that I'm driving through this that is true to the brand? What is the relevance of what I'm doing to these people? People, their needs evolve, right? At this point in time, how is this relevant to my consumer? How am I solving something for my consumer, right? You need to understand it, because your consumer, if you don't do something at the right, if you don't do something that is right by the consumer at the right time in a way that is relevant to them, your campaign or whatever you do is going to be absolutely a waste and irrelevant to people. So always go back to your consumers. See, you have a foundation that you have built on. See, what are the expectations? What are the insights based that are very specific to your consumer? Ask question, right? The last one, and this is the biggest thing that you need to do as brands and agencies, logically co-create. Why do I say logically co-create, right? We are creatives. We are inspired, right? All the time. And when an agency comes to a client with an amazing idea, sometimes it gets shot down, right? But why does it get shot down? Is the agency also, before they bring it to a brand team, needs to ask yourself, so that brand foundation that I spoke of, an agency should have, the brand team should have the same foundation, should be there with both, where you, when you bring a campaign, you ask yourself, the agency first, when I'm taking this to my client, have I asked myself whether this fits my consumer, whether this fits the brand. Have I ticked those boxes, right? And a brand team, when you're giving a brief to the agency, ask yourself, have I ticked these boxes? Am I right by the foundation that I have built, right? And and even if, and when you kind of bring something to the table, agencies also should ask the client, if a brief is given, how is this brief right by your brand? How is this brief delivering something to your consumer? Logically co-create. Keep your emotions aside. We are very egoistic. We are very inspirational. Hence, we are very proud of whatever we do, and we are egoistic. We are very emotional. Keep those aside. Ask the right questions. Is this right by my consumer? Is this right by my brand? And this responsibility lies on both the agency and the brand team. And I personally have experienced, we work with the agencies that we work with. Agencies have come and asked, we have like thinking that they're great ideas. We have gone and asked agencies, how can we kind of execute it? And agencies have asked, are you sure this is right by your brand? Your brand is very positive and all of that. Isn't this a little towards a bit of this gloomy, scary side? Are you sure you want to do this? Right? And that's logical co-creation. You're logically asking a question that is very valid, and that needs to be done. If an agency takes a brief just because a client is giving, or if a brand team takes a campaign just because an agency is giving and not question as to why we are doing this, that is recipe for disaster, and great work won't come through that, right? Because whatever you do, you're doing for your specific consumer through your specific brand, and it's important that you logically co-create, right? So for Soft Logic Life, because we've done, I'm not saying 100%, we've also had a little wherever, obviously why these learnings are also coming is because I myself have also been a culprit of sometimes missing out on little things. But we have done what I spoke of to a great extent, and that is why we have been able to transform a very negative industry to a very positive one. And owing to the foundation that we laid, we have also, from 2016 is when we launched the brand, we from 5th place to 3rd place, beating AIA, now we are 3rd. And that has happened in insurance. The top 5 haven't shifted for 20 years. And this is history that we have done here. And that also happened because we really went on to the foundation of everything we did. And we kept on going back to our basics and questioning everything we did. And that really helped us keep focus when everyone was, the industry was doing all kinds of things. It helped us keep focus and go on our journey and get us here, right? And again, we were the youngest brand to win brand of the year, right? And followed by so many other global and local brands, right? These will come, right? Fact of the matter is, I mean, awards will come if you really go to your basics, really understand your foundation, really understand your consumer, and put out the right kind of content out there, or the right kind of work out there, right? But the fact of the matter is, these will come if you have that foundation. That basic foundation needs to be done right, and it needs to be sustained in a consistent way, not forgetting the basics that it's built on. You can revisit, you can reevaluate, but still you need to have this foundation, the basics. You have to always go back and question every time. And basics are not something that can be negotiated on. Basics are there for a reason, and it's important that you follow through and always stick to them, because it's very simple, but the impact it can create is huge. And it can go, I mean, you stick to your basics and ensure that you kind of really drive it. Awards will kind of come to you automatically, right? When I mean, one reason why we won brand of the year was because we really, if you really listen to how I explained you the consumer and what their need was and how we positioned, that story really came through in everything that we kind of put out there. And that is one reason why we won brand of the year, because it really had a story. It really showed how this kind of evolution came through for the brand, right? So basics are important, and you should never, it's non-negotiable, basically, right? So the next time you think of something for your brand, or next time an agency, if you're in an agency or presenting something to your brand team, or if you're in a brand team and hearing something or briefing an agency, ask why and how. Why is this right for my brand? How is this driving what I need for the brand? And how is this relevant to my consumer? Go back to basics always. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Print to the end. Thank you, Chams, for a very hearty session, speaking from the heart. Really enjoyed listening to uh, you explain what you've been doing over the last 5 years. So we have a question to start off the Q&A session with from Suchinta. So she's asking, I think it's Suchinta. I'm sorry if it's Suchinta. So what are the common mistakes you see done by both the client and the agency in the creative process when developing campaigns? The common mistakes you see.
So I think, again, going back to my presentation, the most common thing I see they do is not really questioning yourself. How is this right by my brand? That's a question we also keep on asking. What right does my brand have to say this? Sometimes the same campaign might be, we might be able to, any brand might be able to do a certain campaign, but how is this, what right does your brand have to say what you're saying or show what you're showing, right? So sometimes we, like, again, like I said, inspiration drives us to come up with amazing campaigns, but we fail to question how this is relevant to my brand, and whatever the message that is going through, how is it relevant to what you're, the consumer that you're talking to. And a big mistake that I see a lot of people do is, and something that I've also learned through my journey, is that sometimes we have so much to say and we forget what is our core thought, what is the core thought as a brand that we are driving. We get sidetracked and we kind of try to do all kinds of nice campaigns that come, and we kind of lose track, we lose focus, and we tend to do a lot of things. You can't, as a brand, people might listen to you, we might see you, like I said, one time, two times, 10 times. You can't be giving 10 different messages the 10 times they see us, because they won't remember you. You won't make an impression that is big enough for them to remember you, and you're going to confuse the hell out of that person. So don't do that. That's a big mistake that I see brands and agencies do, both together.
All right, interesting. So Chamindri, one question that I really wanted to ask you was, now we are at actually Effiespiration leading up to Effies, right? Effies or any other awards platform now throughout the world, despite the pandemic, most award shows continued, and very good campaigns were produced during during this time to actually deal with some of the stressors and the consumer issues that we've had. How does it help in terms of scientific branding, a brand team or an agency team to stick by the basics, by actually being a part of an award program, actually crafting an entry? How does that help this whole going back to the basics thing that you
Right.
spoke?
Right. That's quite an interesting question, because I myself, in terms of going through this whole process, it's a very enlightening. I think Asantha spoke in a previous session of his how important it is to kind of really apply for awards and really go through that process, because especially when you kind of do campaigns like this, and sometimes let's say we figured out some way to kind of put this out and put our message out in a way that is relevant. But when you apply for these awards and you kind of really craft your message in a and really, kind of build your case, there is when you realize how much have you missed, or how much of a mark have you made, and how your strategy is really coming back to place. Because every recognized awards program in globally or in Sri Lanka really takes you through a very scientific approach to establishing why you did what you did. It talks about your strategy, it asks about your consumer insights, and how you really brought this campaign to life, right? And right now in this context also, where people have, like, I don't think anybody, agency to clients, anybody has taken, just because it's COVID and things have been difficult, nobody has really rested. Everybody has done a lot of work. And it really helps also for people to kind of apply for the things like this, and really kind of get your, now COVID is obviously, in a situation like this, COVID is here to stay, right? Whatever the impact that it has created will continue, right? And brands also have like really looked at different ways to kind of really put themselves out and really kind of establish a message that is very time relevant right now. So like for an example, if you're applying right now for an awards program, even, you really get to question yourselves what you've been doing up to now, these recent campaigns that you've done, and how it kind of brings you back to strategy, what you've missed, what you've done right. So I think, I mean, awards programs in overall really helps you break it down, look at your strategy. I mean, if you haven't ever been looking at your basics, awards program is one thing that gets you to look at your basics. And that I think is important for any company or brand or agency to do on an annual basis, because it really helps you do that.
Right. Interesting. All right. So now a common issue that we see, right, is sometimes the agency is more scientifically inclined. They are very logical, but the client is not. Client is looking for a lack of better wording, sexy campaigns, right? Campaigns that go viral, right? And the agency, no matter how much they stick to basics, how logical they are, the client will shoot it down. Or let's turn the tables around. The client is extremely logical, but the agency team is really looking for the next hot idea, right? But these are agencies and clients who have been working together for some time, or like they've done good work in the recent past. They are obviously looking to go ahead and do the same, but there's definitely a mismatch in the way they look at things. In a situation like that, what would you recommend?
What I do is, again, co-creation is a very strong word that I like to use, because see, that happens mostly because that belongingness is missing somewhere. It's missing, and maybe the brand team is who kind of really brought this. If it's a brand team that is being very logical and understanding the whole scientific aspect of things, maybe the brand team was who created it, and the agency had very less to do with it, right? Yeah, maybe that is the issue, why something like that would come. What I would say is, on an annual basis, if you might have two agencies or one agency that you work with, you need to always, maybe it might be a brand annual brand planning session or whatever, you need to bring your base, you need to bring your foundation, and along with the agencies, along with your client, you need together relook at, revisit, and look at your foundation and agree that this is what we are as a brand talking about. This is what we stand for. And that the buy-in from both sides is important, because then you own it. It's your baby, 50-50, right? As long as that ownership is there, that problem to a great extent goes off, because especially that comes when you don't have ownership.
Okay. So my last question to you. So we have different types of agencies. It can be two different creative agencies working on the same brand. Let's say one is working on the thematic aspect, one is working on the product-oriented aspect. Or we have a digital agency, a media agency, a creative agency, a PR agency, and so many other agencies working on the same brand, right? So then, in terms of keeping the basics that you spoke of, right? How do you really ensure that all the executions that are going from each of these agencies is kept homogeneous and in terms of kept within the boundaries that you spoke of for the brand?
That's that's actually a very tough question to answer, because I myself and our team itself is that's a daily battle that we go through, because when you have one agency, it's very easy. They're like very much aware and very much in line with the brand. But when you have multiple agencies and little agencies working on different things, this happens, and I would say it's not easy to always have it 100% right. Obviously, it goes back and forth, but anybody, the absolute basic thing that anybody should do is to have a brand onboarding exercise, where you really take them through what the brand stands for. But in a practical sense, sometimes it's a little challenging when you have multiple for little things when agencies come on board. But see, it's a very difficult thing to do on a very ongoing basis, because trust me, when little agencies get involved in different projects, everybody has their own way of doing it, and understanding the brand the same way is a little challenging. But the basic thing that you can do to avoid a large scale mismatch in terms of what the brand stands for is to have that brand guide, where you have a very brief document and you do that induction. If it's a main agency that you're trying to bring on board, even if it's 2 3, you need to have them onboarded to the brand and tell them what the brand stands for and really get that buy-in, that ownership into the whole thing. But essentially always have even one document, a one slide that tells this is the brand, this is our color palette, this is how we do, have references, so that in 1 or 2 slides you're able to tell a story about your brand and get them to kind of buy into it and really understand what the brand stands for. But again, you can have issues because it's different agencies looking at your brand in different angles. But those are things that you can do to minimize that impact.
All right, I think it's also the other way around also, because there are multinational agencies who have been actually handling the brand for a longer period of time, whereas the brand manager could have changed, and it's the brand manager who has to be taught by the agency what the brand stands for as well, and having that document, having a blueprint goes a long way. So we have a question asked by Asantha coming from Prasanga. If you analyze the Sri Lankan context, are there any unique attributes we need to focus on from a brand basics point of view? If you analyze the Sri Lankan context, any unique attribute that you think we should focus on looking from a brand basics point of view?
When you mean attributes, if you can be more specific on that question, when you say attributes, what exactly?
Is Prasanga on the session? Can we unmute Prasanga? I think it's from a cultural, I think what they mean is from a very Sri Lankan led cultural point of view, like a very uniquely Sri Lankan point of view. Is there anything you think that we need to do, especially because we are in Sri Lanka, because we're talking about Sri Lankan brands? Are there non-negotiables that we need to have?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I think this is something that is relevant to any brand and every brand, and it's not just Sri Lanka. Wherever you operate in, if you're operating in a certain market, I mean, you need to understand your consumer. For an example, I mean, if you're talking about Unilever operates in so many countries, right? Unilever India, what Unilever India doesn't work in Unilever Sri Lanka for that market, right? You really need to understand what your consumer is and who they are, especially from a cultural point of view, how we behave to consume our lifestyle. Everything changes. So I mean, your brand might be one, but your brand traits to everything might be one, but your consumer is hugely different, and there can be worlds apart differences between those two consumers. So it's very important that you understand who you're talking to and the lifestyle. Something that marketeers forget to really look at is they look at the demographics of audiences, but demographics are very generic, right? You need to understand the psyche, why people do what they do, understand their lifestyle, why do they say what they say, understand how the psyche works and really talk to them. Because like I said, emotional buying is what happens, right? So unless you talk to understanding the culture, understanding the behavior, the value system, unless you market that to them in a way that is emotionally relevant, your message is going to be just water on a duck's back, right? So it's not just Sri Lanka. Anywhere you go, if your market is very specific and there are specifications, which is the case, you need to look at your consumer. The brand might be constant, but your consumer is vastly different.
All right. We have a question from Upeksha. Actually, we have two questions from Upeksha. The 4 tips you said about returning back to the basics, mainly the brand key. How futuristic or how long term can the foundation of the brand be, And based on that, how effective is it? How effective is it to a brand if you are to adapt with new trends? So basically, how
Hmm.
long term your brand foundation be, and is it effective in adapting to new trends?
Very important question, very valid question. I was hoping somebody would ask that also. The brand key is your foundation that you need to stick to. However, I kept on saying revisit, reevaluate, right? Your brand key is based on your consumer, your main core consumer. People change, their lifestyle changes, their behavior changes, their mindset changes. So it won't change on an annual basis, but it will over time change. Insurance today is this, but so many years back it would have been something else. 5 years later it might be something completely different. So that's why I kept on saying your brand key can't be in your attic or your basement. You need to take it out, you need to revisit with your agency, with your other partners. You need to reevaluate, okay, our consumer is this how they still think, is this how they still behave, right? You need to look at it, because everything you do is for your consumer. Your brand promise is for your consumer. Your functional emotional benefits that you're driving is for your consumer. So everything is based on what they think, their psyche, their lifestyle. So if the consumer is changing, obviously you will have to relook at it, revisit and reevaluate to see what changes need to come in. But that doesn't quite happen very regularly, but that's something that you have to do constantly. And we as a team at SoftLogic Live, we do that. And there are times where the agencies have come and said, you know what, you shouldn't change this. This is why the brand was birthed, and the reasons behind why we said what we said. Still, the consumer is that. Why are you changing this? Right? That those questions have to come. And that is why, to Kavi's previous question, why I said that belongingness, where both the agency and brands team is coming together to do this, is important, because that belongingness has to come together.
All right, so we have a question from Famil. When you look at the Sri Lanka marcom industry as a whole, where do you rank us when it comes to going back to basics? How forward or behind are we?
When you say us,
Sri Lanka as a total marcom industry, agencies, marketers,
compared to global,
yes.
okay. Well, I would say pretty. I mean, see, there's a lot of potential in the Sri Lankan market in terms of what we do, but on the simple fact, what I picked up from that was the basics part of it. We are very backward in terms of doing that. And that is one reason whatever the amazing stuff we do might not hit the mark, is also because of that, because we are not disciplined enough as brands people and as agencies to go back to basics all the time and go question ourselves. Even when you do something, you question yourself first. Why? Right? We are not disciplined enough to do that. And we have immense potential, we have amazing creativity in this country, but we miss the mark because we don't stick to basics, and we are like pretty backward when it comes to the global platform and us. And that is also why when I mean, a lot of people here might be in would have been in judge panels to kind of awards programs to judge even entries. When you read them, you understand, right? People can't really properly put together the logic behind why you did what you did, right? Because you really don't do that as a practice. You don't do that, and that is something that we really need to work on.
All right. I think we've come to the end of session 4, Effiespiration. Thank you, Chamindri, for a very lively session. I think the takeout from today's session is to keep on asking why and how multiple times until you know. And always think, when you're thinking on behalf of brand, is this something that this brand would do? I mean, when it's ourselves, we question, is this something that I would do? It applies to our brands as well. Is it something this brand would do? I mean, when you look at a Burger King commercial, you know it's something that Burger King did. can we stick to doing the same thing? Can we stick to the same tonality, the same identity? Always go back to basics. That is what we've been talking today. So hope you were inspired a little bit to kind of help like whatever work that you are doing. Do pass on the inspiration. Do share, because what we want is to basically learn from each other. And if any one of you want to feature in a Effiespiration session, please drop us a inbox message in our Facebook page, or talk to one of us directly. We are all ears, because we would love to learn from you. So thank you so much for joining on a Wednesday evening. It has been a pleasure having all of you. Stay inspired, stay safe, and good night.
Thank you. Good night.